Then you also see people, they're in the pose, and by the time you tell them to come out, they don't want to move. They're just there, and they kind of, oh no, I don't want to come into the rebound. I want to stay
5 more
here.
minutes.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Good Moves, a podcast by Punchpass. On our show, we have wholehearted conversations with fitness and yoga studio owners to learn more about the unique ways they run their business and inspiring ways they live their lives. I'm your host, Claire. I ran a thriving yoga studio for 8 years and have been part of the Punchpass team for almost as long. We have so much to learn from each other. Let's jump right in. Welcome to Good Moves. Today on the podcast, we have Yaisa. Yaisa, can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes. Well, my name is Yaisa, and I teach yoga here in South Australia, just south of Adelaide on the Fleurieu Peninsula. And I also run yoga teacher trainings, mostly at the moment here, and also once the borders open again. Hopefully we can start running them in Bali, and we had plans to also go even more overseas. So hopefully that will start happening soon.
Beautiful. So I know that you've been teaching yoga for a while now. Can you tell me where it all started?
How far back do you want me to go?
As far as you'd like.
I'll start with my first yoga class because that's, I suppose, where everybody's yoga teaching journey starts. That was back in 2006, I reckon. I was living in Singapore at the time. I was working for a Dutch bank, and I was working there as an expat, and I was just going to a gym. Included in the gym membership was that you could take all the classes, and there was this yoga class that was at the perfect time with my work schedule. So I went there. I think it was a Wednesday evening, and I thought, hey, wow. This is harder than I thought. I always thought that yoga was easy, and that was just, the cliche of sitting and oming and chanting a bit. And this really changed my perspective. The teacher there was an amazingly graceful Chinese woman. She was tall. She was a dancer, I think, originally, and she could do the most amazing postures, and she could talk at the same time and teach us. And so that was a really good experience on how yoga can be elegant and graceful and calm, combined with strong physicality. And I think that attracted me to it. So I started practicing yoga more often. And eventually I left Singapore and I moved to Egypt. I was going to take a sabbatical and be a scuba diving instructor for a year. And I knew that the little village by the Red Sea where I was going to dive, there wasn't any yoga teachers. So I brought some yoga videos with me, or DVDs at the time. We didn't have YouTube and all that stuff. So DVDs, and I started watching those DVDs, practicing yoga. I got some friends to join because they liked what I was doing. And then we managed to get some more DVDs in. And before we knew it, one of my best friends and I, we were kind of guiding this little group of students. We weren't teachers and they weren't really our students, but we were just doing yoga together, and everybody always turned to us saying, oh, how do I do this pose? How do I do that pose? Because I think I was actually the only one in the group who'd ever done yoga classes. Everybody else had just started there. So I think the seed was planted there. After a while, this friend and I, Daria and I, we started dreaming of maybe doing yoga retreats in Egypt.
Had she done yoga before? Well, she was your friend prior to this?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So this was her first experience with yoga, was with you?
Pretty much,
and
yes.
It got a hold on her in a similar way that it had a hold on you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and whenever she would go back to Holland from Egypt, she would also practice yoga, and we would go to Cairo, and there would be teachers there. So we started exploring yoga together, and eventually we got to know Ashtanga yoga. And that was, I think, where we really got into the yoga practice, where we really understood that it was more than just a physical practice, and that there was a whole philosophy and a lineage sometimes to it. And we started dreaming of organizing these yoga retreats. We thought, well, before we can do yoga retreats, maybe we should do some form of training.
Probably.
Rather than just watch, Shiva Riya DVDs or something like that.
I love her DVDs.
They were amazing.
Yeah. She was amazing.
In the desert, because we were living in the desert there.
She had the beautiful music and the beautiful landscapes, and I remember doing those too. They were incredible.
Yeah, exactly. So you understand why we got sort of seduced by that kind of life. So we ended up doing teacher trainings. We did them separately, but I did it in India in 2013.
I always feel like you've been teaching for longer than that. You always seem like you have the wisdom of decades?
Well, it feels like it's been ages, but yeah, if you count the years, it's not that long. It's just that I really immersed myself in it. After that, I did the teacher training. I came back to Egypt. And instead of diving, I started teaching full time. A couple of years later, my husband and I decided to move to Australia. So we did sort of a whole world tour to get to Australia. And in the meantime, I was teaching a little bit here and there. I had to stop for a while because we were moving from country to country. And then when I came to Australia, I knew I didn't want to go back to a 9-to-5 job.
Was Singapore the last time you'd done that corporate work?
Yes.
Or did you ditch it after that?
Yeah, I ditched it because I became a diving instructor, and I very consciously then decided I did not want to go back to a 9-to-5 job. But when I arrived in Australia, I was like, okay, I got to earn my living somehow, but I don't want to go for a job. I knew I could do admin or hospitality or anything, anything that anybody can do.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to continue in the yoga business. So I started teaching full time. I started teaching at studios, and I started running my own classes, so renting a little space. And I started building it from there. So the full-time teaching, or the number of hours of teaching that I did in Egypt, I made sure I brought that down because that was a lot.
You were doing, I remember talking to you once, 20 classes a week.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe a rookie mistake. It was my first year. And I was a bit younger and probably a bit fitter than I am now, but still 20 classes a week was a lot.
Yeah.
I always have huge respect for school teachers who stand in front of a classroom the whole day. And of course, teaching yoga is maybe a little bit more physical, but you're constantly focused on what the students are doing. You have to carefully think about what you're saying. If you've got a sequence, you've got to remember the sequence.
Yeah, but then you've got to adapt it to who actually showed up. I mean, I think that's one of the most challenging things is all the best laid plans, and then you get 2 pregnant people and someone who's never done yoga before, and you're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember my first class was like that. I was super nervous. I prepared, probably took me 4 hours to prepare that sequence, and I practiced it and I repracticed it and I changed it and I did it again, and then it was perfect. And then I walked in and there was this older gentleman that could hardly lift a leg.
Yes.
So I had to change everything around. And it sometimes also happens the other way around. You prepare really gentle class, and then these people come in and they're like, okay, I want to sweat a little, and you're like, okay, you've got to turn it into a more dynamic and a more spicy class. So all that effort and doing that 20 times a week, I think it was really a lot.
How long did you sustain that for?
I think for about 9 months.
Wow. How was your own practice?
Non-existent.
Did it go away? I was going to say. Yeah, absolutely nothing. So the physical side, I mean, hopefully did you stay balanced through the teaching, do you think, from a physical standpoint, or did?
I think I was lucky that I had a really strong basic health.
Yeah.
So, and when you're teaching, you're moving. So at least I had that.
Right.
I wouldn't say that I was practicing yoga while I was teaching. Obviously, we never actually do our own yoga practice on the mat.
No.
But while we're teaching. But at least I moved.
Yep.
But I noticed that my own practice was really fading. I tried self-practice, but when you teach 20 classes a week, you somehow don't have the time and the energy anymore to get on the mat for yourself. And there were no other teachers.
I was going to say, sometimes going to another class at that point is a great thing to do, but there was no one around.
There was no one around. That's why I was teaching so many classes, because when I got there were no teachers. We were doing the videos. And then when I did the teacher training, I came back. I was one of the I think there was one other teacher. She was teaching one class a week somewhere on the rooftop where I couldn't be because I was teaching at the same time.
Yeah.
So, after that, I actually went to Bali after that to recuperate.
Yeah.
And I think I went there for maybe 6 weeks or something.
Wow.
It took me 2 weeks to wind down from teaching. I realized I could be a student again. That was great. This was when I was at the height of my Ashtanga practice, or
so
that's when it started again.
So you were teaching Ashtanga as that was your main teaching focus?
No, I was practicing it. So I was when I left Egypt and I went to Bali for that break. I picked up my Ashtanga practice again.
Yep.
And that's when my own Ashtanga practice really took off. And I didn't want to teach Ashtanga initially because I wanted to keep it as my own practice.
Yeah.
And also because I never went to Mysore, which is what you sort of officially have to do to officially call yourself an Ashtanga teacher.
Can you just explain a little bit what's Mysore?
So in Mysore, that's the town in India where the founder of Ashtanga Yoga, Pattabhi Jois, started his Ashtanga school. He became quite the guru. There's a whole other story to his teaching nowadays, unfortunately, in the whole Me Too side of things.
Yes.
But he had lots of people coming there to train the way he was teaching, which was self-practice. So he created the primary series and then subsequent series, and you are taught the series one posture at the time, practically. Yep. So everybody progresses at their own speed, at their own pace. You can start as a complete beginner who's never done yoga, but you can also start coming from another yoga style, another yoga school, and you just learn and get new poses from the teacher, depending on your body's condition, your mental condition, and.
How do you feel about that approach now? Because I know when we first met, you were quite a strong advocate for Ashtanga. It was very much your baby, like you were, referring to before. It was your practice and you held it quite close to your heart.
Yeah.
How does it sit with you now? I guess when we look back on things, sometimes they look a little bit different. The Mysore approach, that idea of sort of graduating through the poses and getting, I don't know, it's always seemed a little strange to me. Not bad, but just a little bit different than obviously what we see as yoga these days. How do you feel about that now? Do you feel like the Mysore style of the practice is still a good way to go?
Yes and no. I think the Mysore style, as in the self-practice bit, is the way to go. I would love to have a way where we can teach classes where not everybody's doing the same thing at the same time.
Like an open studio. I've always wanted to do that. Just come and I'll be there. And if you want some support, I can help you. But if not, we'll just practice quietly together.
Yeah, maybe you want to sit and meditate. Yes. Maybe you want to do your primary series.
Did you do that at one point? I feel like you did that at one point.
I tried it, but it's still in the back of my mind. So it hasn't worked, but who knows? It's still there. May keep an eye out. Maybe something's going to happen.
Yeah.
But so I do think that self-practice is still the way to go because, all the lead classes, which is basically the only way we're teaching nowadays, is lead classes. They're never exactly right for everyone.
Right.
Some people will love it. Others will wish that it was a little bit more strong. Others will wish it was a little bit more restorative. Yes. And some people have hip problems, but others have back problems. So how can you fit 20 people, even 10 people in one room with the exact same needs?
Right.
So that self-practice way, yes, but the rigidity and the dogmatic way of teaching
of it all.
Of the primary series, I've kind of let that go. I still teach the primary series, mostly nowadays half primary series, is good. I like it, but I don't think you need to be so dogmatic about it. Yeah. I give lots of modifications. I sometimes throw in another pose to prepare for the next pose. I will linger a little bit longer here, a little bit longer there. So I'm not so militaristic as some people sometimes experience or think that Ashtanga is.
Yeah.
So I try to take the good elements out of the practice, and then I've blended it into a slightly kinder, maybe more gentle way of making it more accessible for people.
But you still brand it and package it as Ashtanga and still feel quite strong that it is definitely an Ashtanga practice, not a flow or a vinyasa or anything like that.
Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What other styles are you teaching at the moment?
Yin is one of my favorites.
And you came to Yin not so long ago. Am I right about? So you were Ashtanga was your thing. And then, like a lot of people, I think that did the stronger forms of yoga, Yin comes along and kind of smacks you in the face and goes, oh my goodness, here's this other thing that makes you feel good in a whole different way.
Yeah.
Is that what it was like for you? How did you find Yin?
Well, I actually discovered it in Bali as well. So there was quite a while ago. Yeah. And I started teaching it as one of the first styles when I came here in Australia. Yeah. Because I had to choose what to teach, as I didn't want to teach that many classes, but I wanted to give that variety as well.
Yeah.
So I think when I arrived here 7 years ago, I started teaching Ashtanga and Yin. Those were the two styles. And I remember back then there weren't many people teaching Yin here yet. I was pretty much self-taught in Yin because at the time there were no teacher trainings for Yin available in Australia yet. So I read all the Bernie Clark books, etc., and I started teaching it, and I started loving it more and more So whilst my Ashtanga practice was progressing in one way, my yin teaching was also progressing. And I think that kept each other wonderfully in balance.
Yeah.
I ended up doing a yin teacher training as well, eventually years after I'd already been teaching.
But they're quite clear about that. When I did the yin teacher training, and they were quite like, go ahead, figure it out. Here's some ideas. Go teach a class. It was very, very different to the other styles of yoga that I as a yoga teacher as well, where it's like, you must do this, you must do this, you must pose and then counter pose and do all this stuff. It was very, I remember sort of leaving the training and having them, have fun. And all the people that sort of invented it, as much as you can say that with a style of yoga, are all very go. Play with it, see what feels good, which I really love.
Yeah.
I think it's such a great philosophy. Do you find your students go between the two styles? Do you have lots that mix and match, or do you have lots that stay in their lane?
No, I have a lot of people who mix and match.
Yeah.
So a lot of my students come to a lot of my classes.
Yeah.
The variety of classes. I would say that especially the people who do Ashtanga and Hatha tend to come to yin as well.
Yep.
But a lot of the people who do yin, you will never see them on the mat doing hatha or ashtanga or vinyasa. Yeah. So let's say it's people who don't necessarily are into sweating. My own husband, for example, he loves to do yin. It's really good for his back.
Yeah.
It's really good for his joints. But I will never get him to do a warrior or
fair enough too.
or a standing forward fold. Yeah, I have people that do both, but people that do yin tend to like yin.
Do you feel that do those people transition away from the other styles? I feel like a lot of people try a yin class once and that's it. They walk away from the stronger classes they've been coming to, or do a lot of them now come? I think yin used to be a hard sell. It was hard to describe yin, I think, and it was hard for people to understand. And I think as the years go on, people have a better understanding.
Yeah.
Are you finding that people have a better understanding now and know what they're coming to get and completely understand that it is that nice mellow flavor?
I think it depends on who they practice yin with. Because I think a lot of yin teachers are a bit afraid to teach the real, like, strong, deep yin.
What do you see as strong, deep yin?
Like holding dragon pose for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Or, a wide-legged forward fold, seated forward fold, dragonfly, without props.
Without props.
For a while.
Okay.
A lot of yin teachers tend to turn it more restorative, make it very restorative.
Yeah.
Because they're careful, cautious not to get people to go over the edge.
Right.
You know how we talk about the edge.
Absolutely.
So in order to be just cautious, they will make it more restorative. So they will offer lots of props and they will offer shorter holds. So people who do that kind of practice with those teachers, maybe they will find it they will find the restorative practice in it that they're looking for versus the busy lifestyle that they have, or the maybe the running, the jogging, the cycling that they do, or the swimming.
Yeah.
But people who do yin, like the more traditional yin, if you can call it traditional. I mean, you just said yourself, anything is possible. But let's say that the way that Paul Grilly meant it for actually healthy people who had a strong, for example, Ashtanga practice to really open those joints more and get that fascia to release. That kind of yin practice is not so restorative.
No.
It's quite a challenge.
It is.
And you have to be mentally prepared to do that practice.
Absolutely.
So I don't think, at least my students, they really see it as a complement to their strong practice. So they don't stay with yin only. So people who do Ashtanga, they feel they need the yin to compensate the Ashtanga, but they don't just stick with Ashtanga and don't stick with yin and don't do Ashtanga anymore, or vinyasa or hatha. Yeah.
There's something quite, I think, amazing when you hold a pose that you're familiar with for those extra couple of minutes, because you think, I'll take pigeon pose, for example, because it's a fairly common one. You hold it for maybe a minute in a regular vinyasa class if you're lucky at the end, and it's a hip opener, and you think you understand what your pigeon pose is and what it feels like and what it does to your body. And then something happens when you hold it for a minute and a half and 2 minutes and 3 minutes, and it's almost like it's a whole new pose every time. And I think it's such a beautiful way to rediscover your yoga practice, because you've done pigeon pose 100, 1,000 times, and you're like, okay, we're done now. And you have that expectation in your mind, I think, of when it's going to end and what it's going to feel like and where you put your leg. And I just think, I completely understand why yin is taking off and why people are really spending that time.
Yeah, yeah.
And the mental benefits, I think, are amazing too, but they must be incredibly challenging, I think, for people to stay still. for those 5-minute holds? Do you find people getting kind of antsy and
and
having a bit of a freak out?
You can tell. So when I look around the room, like when I teach, I never practice.
Right.
I'm never face down doing pigeon myself, but I'm sitting up and I'm checking on everyone.
Yeah.
And you see the fiddlers, you see the fingers, and then you see the ones who really can't get comfortable. So they're constantly shifting, moving.
Yep.
So those are the ones that you go and help. So those are the ones that have more of a physical restlessness.
Yeah.
But then you have the people that are seemingly lying still and they're tapping their finger or their toe, and they don't realize that they are not quiet somewhere in their bodies.
Some days are better than others, I guess.
Yeah, you see that. But then you also see people, they're in the pose, and by the time you tell them to come out, they don't want to move. They're just there, and they kind of, oh no, I don't want to come into the rebound. I want to stay here. Yeah. So you got the whole range.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you how that works with your online teaching, because I also know that you were a fairly reluctant adopter of the online format.
Yeah, you're saying you're understated.
And now I might say that you're a bit of a passionate advocate for the online format. Can you tell me a little bit how that all came about?
Yeah. Well, it started with the C word. I wanted to keep teaching. I started teaching online classes, so live stream classes. So I didn't want to record classes, put them online, and just not know what people were going to do with it. But I just connected to my regular students. I said, okay, we can do this via Zoom, via Punchpass. Here you go. Here's the link. And I'll see you on screen.
Beautiful.
So I was always adamant that I wanted to see the students, because I know there were also yoga studios where they said, oh, if you don't want to turn your camera on, it's fine. I couldn't teach like that. Just seeing a name on a black screen, that I can't teach to that. So I always asked my students to have their videos on, even if I was only seeing, the middle part of their body.
So it wasn't about correcting their poses or seeing where they were at. It was more about the connection.
And you do get a sense of where their energy is at. I might not see exactly how their feet are positioned or how they're hunching their shoulders or not, but at least I could see if there was an issue, if they're getting tired. And over time, you kind of, if you know your students' bodies, you get a sense of, she's always doing that. Yeah. Let me check. Yeah, I think I see that as well on camera. So you can give them that cue of straightening that leg a bit more, moving the knee a bit that way or that way. So I really wanted that connection. And so basically I taught my regular students live online. And then when we were allowed to come back into the studio, I had half. Some people started coming back. Some people came back or stayed online. And then I had some overseas students as well, like connections, friends of friends, and some old students from when I was teaching teacher trainings abroad that joined me online as well. So some of those stuck as well. But then I was teaching these online classes and I thought, well, maybe I should just record them and see what happens. So I started recording, me. I've never recorded the whole class, so it's just me. Yeah. But it was always me teaching. So there's actual real students either in the shala or on screen. So I'm live teaching to people. And that's what I was recording. And then I decided, okay, you know what? Some of my students can't make it to class all the time. I'll just put those recordings online for my students. Yep. So I never made it public. So they're only accessible for my students. And then I got some nice feedback and they were really happy that they could do the classes in their own time. And it's not tons of students. Right. But even if I make 5, 10, 20 people happy with it, I'm happy. Yeah. The more people I can get on the mat, the better. Yeah. So I started kind of that solid icy attitude that I had towards online is now melting. Yeah. And I'm now using the Punchpass content library to not only make the classes accessible for people who are my regular students, but I've slowly started building a collection of classes that I think are good for students that don't know me, right, to also follow the class.
So you've deliberately created content now that is at a level where you would feel comfortable for anyone watching and anyone giving it a try rather than your more experienced students?
It's work in progress. Yeah. I'm still not entirely happy because my way of teaching is I'm not much on the mat. Right. I move around a lot, or I might be standing on my mat, but I'm looking at the students and I'm not demoing the pose. So somebody who doesn't know me might be like, what am I doing
What
here?
is she talking about?
So and then I walk off my mat and do physical adjustments, which is like totally not suitable for recordings. So yeah, I've slowly started creating a collection of classes where I don't do that too much. Plus, and this is the fun bit that I've just started with recently, I've started doing my own classes. So I'm recording myself doing my own class that I've recorded previously. So I'm creating my own demo, basically.
Oh, okay. So rather than doing while you're teaching, you actually inceptionized it.
Yeah.
So you do it in two different ways.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. So I teach a class, and at the end of the class, I think, oh, that was actually a nice class. But as usual, I'm never on my mat. So I'll, the next day or the next week, I'll play it, and then I'll do it myself. So I've done this in one of the studios where I teach, or just this nice space. And then I record myself, and then I overlay it. I do a bit of editing in iMovies,
fantastic.
and then I have me teaching a class.
So that for you is better than getting the hang of, not getting the hang of, because I don't mean to say it like you're lacking if you can't do this. It's obviously a choice. But that to you is preferable to deciding you're going to do the poses while you're teaching. Doing the poses while you're teaching is not really an option for you while you're in that position.
No, some of the poses are, but then it would take away from what I'm offering the students that are in the shala or online at the moment.
Yeah.
If you see some of the older recordings where people were only online, you see me teaching an Ashtanga class, and most of the time I'm staring at the screen like this.
Looking around all the little corners
I'm
and seeing who's there.
I'm counting, I'm doing all the stuff, and I'm not demoing anything. I'm just looking at the students. Because when you self-practice, and that's the whole Ashtanga bit, you don't need to look at the teacher. Because you're self-practicing.
And there's something nice about that with the voices. And going back to what we were saying about Shiva Ray before, I actually used to do yoga based on her CDs. She had these CDs that she had, and you'd pick the track listing and you'd say, I want 1, 4, 5, 7, and 9, and you'd press play, and you'd just do it with the sound of her voice. And that's such a beautiful thing to do once you get the hang of it, is to be able to do yoga in that way. And I've had students come to classes and close their eyes or never look at me once. And I think that's great. It's such a beautiful thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you're doing the teacher training too. I want to talk to you about that, because I want to talk to you about what you're telling your teachers that graduate at the moment, what sort of things you're, I guess, advocating for them and encouraging them as they go out into the world. Tell me a bit about your teacher trainings and how you approach them.
Oh, well, our teacher trainings are multi-style. That's to start with, because I think there is not just one style of yoga that's suitable for you or for your students for the rest of your life.
And you don't want to dilute them and mix them all together and make them into
one blend.
One blend. Yeah.
No. I do, because I do like some of the traditions and some of the lineages. There is value in each of them.
Absolutely.
So in our teacher training, we introduce, as far as I didn't know them already, introduce these styles to the students. So we do hatha. We start with hatha yoga, but the traditional hatha yoga, not the gentle flow that they call hatha now, but the actual more traditional way. And then they move on to Ashtanga, and then they move on to Vinyasa. So that's the three main styles that we teach, but we also run them through a bit of yin and a bit of restorative.
Beautiful.
And this is, I'm talking about the technical aspects of the practice, the philosophy of it, the lineage, the history, and the in terms of practice, they get a much, much bigger experience, because we give them also yin-yang classes. We do, for example, myofascial release. So in terms of practice, they do a lot more, but in terms of how much theory we give them, these are the styles that we talk about. And by making it multi-style, I think one of our biggest intentions is also to make it as accessible as possible for everyone.
Right.
So we've had people doing our teacher training that were super fit, strong, healthy, to a woman that was paraplegic 3 years prior to doing the teacher training. She'd had damage to her spine, so she couldn't walk 3 years before. When she came into the teacher training, she walked in with a cane just to help her on the dodgy bits of floor. But she did the teacher training, of course, with modifications.
Of course.
Amazing person. But we also had a 71-year-old lady.
That's awesome.
Just recently do the teacher training with us. We've had everything.
And do you find most of them go on to teach, or are you finding people are doing the training just to deepen their own knowledge and their own practice, or
50-50?
Yeah,
well, everybody
50-50.
does it.
Yeah.
Everybody does it to deepen their own knowledge.
Of course.
But I think at least 50% of our students have gone on to teach. Some of them have become even full-time teachers, like running their own studios or their own classes. Others just do it, one class
Here
on
and
a
there.
Saturday or, So, that's really nice to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. So they've been on hiatus for a little bit, but you're coming back this year with the trainings?
We've run teacher trainings here in Adelaide all the time. We've been lucky here that we've been able to do it. Somehow the planning was always okay, so we didn't have any major lockdowns, but we had to put them on hold in Bali.
Yeah.
So when we started in Bali with the teacher trainings, I say we because it's my friend Daria, who I mentioned earlier, and we started the teacher training school together. She's based in Bali now. She lives in Bali, so we were running them in Bali. Those were intensives, so 1 month's teacher trainings. Here in Adelaide, they're part-time because people won't really travel to come here and be 1 month in Adelaide. So we run it more for the local students, the local population.
Do you find one format better than the other? Do you prefer one over the other?
It's different, but they're both good.
Yeah.
And I think just like yoga, there is not one style fits all.
Right.
I think also not one type of training fits all. Some people like to get away from their home and immerse themselves 1 month in Bali or Thailand or wherever they do it and do nothing else. Others, they need more time to process.
Yeah.
So they need to go home, they need to sit on it, they need to reread, and then they're happy to come back 2 weeks later to do the next module.
Yeah.
So, there
Different
is
strokes.
something for everyone there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what's next? What's happening?
Oh, well, in terms of trainings, Daria and I are working on our 300-hour.
Awesome.
So it's in the very, very early stages.
That's a huge undertaking. So you start that from scratch. You just figure it out. And wow.
Yeah, of course, within the requirements of the Yoga Alliance, because we are Yoga Alliance registered. But the 300 hours can be... There's even more freedom within the 300-hour formats than the 200 hours.
Yeah.
So, we have been trying to put so much content in our 250-hour teacher training. Actually, our 200-hour already became 250.
I was going to say, you've already pushed it out.
Yeah. And so we're like, we can't keep on, putting more and more stuff in that training. So we're going to have to sort of cut it down there and then create an advanced training. So that's what we're doing. Everything that we can't put in the 200 or 250, we're putting it in the 300.
Yeah.
So that's a big project. But I don't think that's going to happen before another year at least.
But that's kind of good timing though, because you'd have a lot of students from your previous teacher trainings who might be coming around to the idea of deepening again and coming back again. So that's perfect.
Yeah, that's the plan. And also we ourselves need to mature into it as well, of course. You want to make sure that what you're putting down on paper, that you're ready to teach it, not just the presentations, but also the delivery.
Right.
So it involves training yourself as well. In that. And that's actually what I love about teacher trainings. I get to learn by preparing for the teacher trainings.
Well, it's a bit like teaching yoga too.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing. You practice your sequences and you learn a lot more along the way. Yeah, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah. So that's one thing. And I'm going to continue building that online library collection because I'm going to go away again this winter, Australian winter. I'm going to go 3 months to Europe. So hopefully in that time I can keep some of the students going with that library. And that self-practice thing we were talking about.
How's that going at the moment? Really?
Yeah. I still have... I want to create a community. The space where I'm teaching, south of Adelaide in Aldinga Beach, we get together sometimes, the owner of the property and we sit for meditation and we invite other people to join us as well. And we kind of want to expand that. I want to expand that into maybe a practice time so that people can come in, sit or meditate or do yin or
like a Mysore vibe, but
Yeah.
without that. Yeah, more of an open studio kind of situation.
Yeah.
I think that's a really beautiful idea. And I think that as people are coming out of these lockdowns and this time when they've had to be indoors and away from other people, we're all just kind of thinking about all the things we missed out on and ready to get out there again. I mean, online practice is phenomenal, don't get me wrong, but there's something about being in a room with a whole bunch of people breathing that is sounds really scary actually now that I say it out loud, but it's actually incredibly magical. And I think we all need to, it's going to be a process to make that transition mentally as well.
Yeah, getting comfortable in rooms with people, connecting, that as well.
Instead of that feeling like a really stressful environment where we should all be worried about whether, we're going to get sick or that sort of thing. It's been a really interesting process, I think.
It has, yeah.
Do you feel like you've supported your students through it as well? Like through the online classes and things like that? Has there been an element of...
Yeah, I hope I have. I think I have. I have been getting nice, really kind feedback from some of the students writing to me that they really appreciate that they can still do the classes. And I get messages that they've helped, that my classes have helped them through some difficult times. So, but I'm sure that most yoga teachers have been able to reach out to their students. If you've managed to continue teaching somehow, I'm sure everybody's had, even if you only make one person, if you reach out to one person and help them, that's I think worth it already.
Yeah, and I think we had a lot of people like you as the teacher, but also as the student, very reluctant to do an online class. And there are people out there that never will.
Yeah,
and they say it quite clearly. They're like, I will never, sorry, not for me.
Yeah.
But I think there's people that maybe started out that way and then softened that approach and went, look, I'm going to give it a try. And then it became a really, really valuable part of their experience. And whether they keep doing it or whether they run back to the studio as soon as the doors are open or maybe some combination, it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I have students that I thought, I'm sure they'll drop off as soon as they can go back to the studio, but they're still doing things online. So
it's a beautiful thing.
It's amazing. And I think the more options you can offer, the better. And it doesn't matter. They don't have to be your choice all the time. I mean, I wouldn't do online classes all the time, for sure. But
to be able to choose is fantastic.
Yeah. And same with the type of styles or the types of yoga that you offer. Also, if you give variety there.
You stick with your favorites, but sometimes you get forced maybe to try something new as well, which I think is kind of a good thing. And there's a bit more freedom to do that online as well. If you hit play on a video and 5 minutes later you're like, ooh. Yeah. I've certainly done that a few times. Like, oh no, that is not the vibe for today. We're going to try another one.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the voice.
Yeah, sometimes it's not going to work for me at all.
That's
so good.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a weird period, but I've learned a lot from it as a teacher, as a student. Yeah, absolutely.
It's so good to talk to you today. Thank you so much for coming in and joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you again.
Yes, thanks for having me. Thanks, Claire.
If you'd like to learn more about any of the guests that we've featured on the show or about Punchpass, you can head to our website at punchpass.com.